Are we ready? Oh, okay. Guess I won't send that email that was so important for me to. How are you, New York? Are you good? Are you good? Okay. All right. DJ's like, I didn't expect any of this.
No. Okay.
Well, why don't we start? I'll introduce myself after you, but why don't you introduce yourself and we'll kind of just jump into it. So DJ, please.
Sure. Hey everybody, DJ Vaughn here. I lead multicultural media partnerships for Walmart. So what that means is that we want to show up consistently, relevantly, in the most engaging way with different diverse audiences. And so one of the things you're going to hear me say throughout is that we have this emphasis on consistency, right? So we don't want to show up for different diverse individuals or diverse populations during a particular heat moment or during a cultural observance. So I use the example, we just can't show up for Black people during Black History Month and then go silent. And then we show up, HBCU, and then we go silent again. And then here we are for holiday, we want your money. How can we have that sort of consistent cadence of conversation so that we're engaging with different diverse communities and not just talking at them?
That's how my brother shows up. Thanksgiving, I want your money. I'm like, wait a second, you got to be consistent here.
Exactly.
Got to consistently want my money. No. Hey guys, I'm Bonin Bough, Chief Strategy Officer, co-founder of Group Black. But I think that piece that you brought up, in many respects, we're sitting in the Excellence Lounge, and first of all, I just want to thank you. You guys are one of our largest partners, and you've consistently showed up for us. But I think also you push us to ensure that everything that we're doing with you guys is, driving really the community forward, which is, I don't want to say rare, but it's not always the case necessarily. And I think that your point, which is, and we talk about this a lot with partners, is this game can't just be about extraction. In fact, extraction is not actually building, and building benefits everybody. So there was a stat that JP Morgan had that they published maybe 2 years ago that said, here's this consumer, $1.7 trillion worth of spending power. Right. But had we invested at the same rate that we invest in other consumers, it would have been $17 trillion over the last, for 10 years. Yeah. And so that just speaks, I think, a lot to kind of the scale and opportunity if you actually spend time helping the community continue to grow, which you guys have done. Today is a lot going to be about HBCU.
Sure.
Again, I think you guys have been involved for over 100 years or something like that in the HBCU community at some level. I think Howard being the largest. But to that first point, how can brands be accountable and authentic in their marketing tactics? Like, when you guys think about that?
Sure. I think it's important to realize, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier in my intro, but we just try to make sure that we're not just talking at people, that we're actually engaging with them, right? And so there's this research component that I think certain brands or some brands might not do. And so we'll just tell people, we're gonna have a hip hop artist come to campus, or we're gonna bring your favorite celebrity, but they don't necessarily know that resonates with that particular audience. So taking the time to actually have those sort of communications with your target population, I think, is most important. I will say, shout out to our different agency partners and our cultural engagement team and other members of our multicultural media team as well, because we do have that sort of intentional effort to have those sorts of communications. So we're out there doing focus groups. We had a mobile tour. We're doing virtual conversations to make sure that we understand the consumption habits of those different target audience members, but also doing a better job of engaging and not just transacting. So that's one way, just making sure. I'd say the other thing is to find your niche. So say, for example, you don't necessarily have to be a Walmart. You don't have to be a P&G. We love P&G, by the way, so I'm not shading anybody. One of our largest suppliers. But they do an excellent job.
Don't screw that client up for us.
No,
as well.
I'm giving them credit. I'm giving them credit. If you can't take the P&G or the Walmart approach, find your niche, right? And so one of the things that we try to preach is that if you can't buy all the classics, if you can't show up with a physical presence at these various games, if you can't do X, Y, and Z, figure out your competitive advantage of what you can contribute to the community, and understand that it doesn't have to be at the same level of a Walmart or a P&G or insert brand, but you have to better understand what you can offer. And so that's what we preach in terms of accountability as well. I think also, to your point of authenticity, it goes back to what I mentioned in terms of that conversation piece, right? And so just don't do it. Make sure you actually have some cultural driven insights to impart, but also recognizing that it is about, to your point, contribution and not extraction.
Right, and what I find fascinating too is that, you guys will be surprised. So I didn't go to an HBCU personally,
I knew.
Well, sorry. You're like, I can tell. You accomplished nothing.
No.
Like,
I'm HBCU adjacent.
right,
so,
okay. Adjacent.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that. So am I. But, as we started really kind of working in the space and I started attending and seeing, first of all, the statistics are crazy when you just think about who are the most influential within that community.
Sure.
I mean, it's like the number one, graduate of doctors, of accountants, of, females running for president, black females running for president, 100%. And when you see how few, I was shocked. I was blown away by actually how few brands have been thinking about what I used to get bombarded with when I was on college, how few brands have actually invested in that community, and how open of an opportunity it is if you truly invest to actually become a signature part, which is very rare to find areas still where it's influence, it's youth, and you can become a signature part of that. Yeah. So, you talked about your team. Just tell me about some of the strategies that you guys have put in place to really have that long-term engagement with those communities. And you said beyond single campaigns, so I think that's one piece, but what else?
Yeah, I'd say it's important, or at least it was important for us to realize how, we had been at one point, and it just wasn't us, to be fair, but when I first started at Walmart about 6 years ago, whenever we would do something for a particular community, oftentimes, I don't know if y'all are subject to reading the comments whenever it's on social. A lot of ways it's great, a lot of ways it's true, but there were some accusations of pandering. And so is it performative? Is it pandering? How come y'all aren't on campus? Things of that nature. And it wasn't, again, just specific to Walmart and my other brand experiences too. It sort of had that sort of call out. What are you truly doing for the community? Is this just a show? Is it a performance? And so for us, it was making sure that we had this evergreen approach, right? So I'm intentionally making sure that our engagement with HBCUs isn't happening just around back to school or around homecoming. Like, you're going to see something for us in November. You're going to see something from us, in January. You're going to see things that have that sort of consistent pulse, so that we don't get accused. And what we're seeing, at least over the last couple of campaigns that we've been intentionally focusing on this evergreen approach, is that sort of negative sentiment is lessening and a lot more is positive, especially after we launched our Black and Unlimited initiative, which hopefully y'all know about. Give me some head nods if you know about it. Okay, appreciate you. Keep it up. Walmart.com/Black and Unlimited if y'all want to follow along. And so
Wait a second. This says Group Black 9.
Just saying. If you get a chance, check it out for me. Like, comment, and share. But it was that in particular because we were saying how we need to show up consistently, and it's not just for HBCU communities, but it's that evergreen approach. I think it is our emphasis there. But I think it's also about too making sure that the engagement is not just with a researcher or with someone telling us what to do with the community. Again, it's about having that sort of meaningful engagement. So we're out there in the community. Right. If you follow me on Instagram, you see, my frequent flyer miles are looking great because we are making sure that we are showing our face. We're not just cutting a check. And so it's that move, that intentional effort to make sure, again, we're moving from the transactional to the more engaging and actually having a dialogue. And with that, we're seeing the payoff there as well. And I don't know if this is one of your questions, so forgive me if I'm getting off script. But it was even about us realizing, too, in our research that we have to be more effective in making sure that it's not just us concentrating on those larger known or those bigger name HBCUs, but understanding that all HBCUs deserve some love. And so that was the impetus, the catalyst for a lot of what we did even last fiscal year when we went to 4 different campuses and actually brought different resources and panels and had different higher profile individuals there on campus, but also not from just an entertainment perspective, but understanding what I call the pain points, but also the passion points, and leaning into not just the marketing value of it or just flashiness of it, but also doing something that was more so related to career and education.
No, look, I mean, we watch, of course, a lot, and we work with you guys, but, since everybody's shamelessly plugging up here, I'm also, we do run the largest tour, so I'm just saying, if you know.
Yeah. Congratulations.
But no, it was interesting because in that journey, actually our very first intersection was actually running a Basquiat exhibit, I think maybe 10 schools or something like that.
Yeah.
And, kudos to, like your team, our team is, in the community, thinking about the community. Kudos to them for bringing that, because, and it was really about, there's the big guys, but there's the small guys, which nobody, like the big guys struggle, and the small guys, they're like, who, what, who,
exactly.
New phone, who this, click. So, Basquiat wasn't coming to those schools.
Yeah.
But yet the funny thing is also you have such a beautiful curated museum in many, even of those small schools, but the community didn't even know about it. Yeah. So part of the work was bringing the Basquiats there, but then the other part of the work was making sure the community realized what a gem they had in their backyard from a curated museum of art and culture beyond just the Basquiats. And so, but that's what I think is, for me, which is so amazing, is that there's so much richness sitting in those schools that just people, very few are participating. But to your point, it has to be done in an authentic and truly engaged way. And the students appreciate beyond just, hey, can you put a celebrity on the yard? Because even some of the basic stuff that we do in partnership with you guys, and most of it was sales related, but with P&G, we just Swiffering your room, move-in day. People were like, yeah, I need that. I need my room clean. Let's go. Exactly. And the funny thing was that conversation was behaviors. We forget behaviors are built. The first time you do laundry is most likely on your own, is most likely in college. And there's a high likelihood that that detergent that you use for the first time is going to be the detergent that you use for the last time. It's just how they're built. And so,
and we sell detergent online and in store for all of your shopping needs.
Agreed.
No,
and wait, my wife's baby food business is also available on Walmart.com.
Well, we appreciate
Tiny
that too.
Organic, so it just went up this weekend. So whatever you could also do to push some traffic there.
I got you. No, I think but you had an interesting point too. Some of the data that our cultural intelligence hub gave us was that typically, from the people that we've surveyed, typically 70% of HBCU students say that only those larger names, those bigger name HBCUs are supported. Right. And over 50% of them said that brands need to be doing more with helping those sort of lesser knowns. And then 42%, if I remember that percentage correctly, say that there's still some hesitation in terms of recognizing whether a brand is doing something for their own financial gain or if they are truly committed to HBCU culture in the community. Right. And so when we have those sorts of data, again, we try to make sure that any approach that we do, anything that we do, from an execution standpoint, or even before execution, strategy and tactics, that it's birthed in that sort of data. Right. And so a lot of what you see from us, especially over the last 2 fiscal years, but going into this fiscal year as well, is rooted in that knowledge that we do have that sort of community purpose piece, which does challenge our traditional media mix in terms of how we show up. We're a little different, but it is still rooted in purpose.
That's interesting. So how does community purpose affect the way you invest or decisions you make? Because I guess you're right. When you're thinking of, when you're thinking of traditional media, let's just say traditional marketing communication, it's really just like efficiency, effectiveness, and while you're kind of thinking long term, you're really trying to move impact today. Whereas this is really, from what I'm hearing from you guys, a real build to be there for a while.
It is. We're still paying attention to the traditional media KPIs, right? So we want to know, regardless of the different media type, what the performance was. So, video completion rate, things of that nature. We've done a lot of work with you in terms of branded content, OLV, things of that nature. But when you're out in the community too, we want to better understand sentiment. We want to understand the number of people who are coming out to the different events. We want to understand what it looks like in terms of a brand lift, brand perception. So asking those sort of brand and reputation. So is Walmart a valued retailer for you? Things of that nature that fall outside of more so what other individuals on the other side of the house are looking in terms of traffic or GMV, but also recognizing that we, my team in particular, are more so brand leaning, have a responsibility to make sure that you all, before you even do business with us, that you know that we're a good corporate citizen, that you know that we are prioritizing you, that we have a commitment to the community. And then that is going to have that halo effect, which will eventually get you into the lower funnel activities. But first, we've got to get you to even consider us. And by doing that, we can hopefully have an impact on the longer term. So making sure that our leadership understands that our work might be a little more longer leaning in driving the brand in terms of brand and reputation aspects.
Yeah, but I think, look, it's consideration, and it's also, do I care enough to remain loyal?
Yep.
Because that's the thing that I think people forget is that the world goes up and down. And so when times get tough, I'm making decisions. I might not go to you, or I might go to some, and the people who I feel care about me are going to be more likely for me to care about them. And so I just even think, even in COVID, I think the 2 restaurants that we went to across high quality Manhattan problems. But anyway, it was just those 2 because it was like, we know that you were always good to us, and so we're going to be good to you. And I think that people forget sometimes the importance of loyalty. And I was just watching, speaking of colleges, I was actually just watching a random there was a whatever it's called when you go back to your school. Anyway, I was there, and there were multiple people that were talking, whatever, homecoming, whatever you do when you go back to those places. No,
reunion?
Well, it was my alma mater.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and it was a couple of us on this panel talking, and a student asked something which I thought was really interesting, which stuck in my mind. I forgot it, but they said, how do you create loyalty in a world of promiscuity? The consumer has so many choices. They used to be loyal, now they can do anything. And how do you create that? And I think, to your point, part of the way that you do that is by proving that you're actually investing in them and not just in benefiting yourself. And I think that comes to kind of this question, which is, so how can organizations, so you guys are doing it, but how can organizations prepare themselves to kind of cultivate relationships in different ways with this community?
Yeah.
And then the other question I want to ask is, from your own personal point of view, how does Walmart, what is the perception of the multicultural consumer of Walmart? So those are the 2. Like, how can organizations prepare themselves, and then what do you think the perception is?
Sure. For your first question, it is more so, and I keep preaching this, so forgive me any sort of redundancy, but it is more so around the communication aspect, right? And so we're not sitting, well, at least I'm not sitting in Bentonville, Arkansas. Y'all pray for me. Lovely city. I love Bentonville.
I love it too.
It's nice and quiet. I don't know. It didn't get enough credit. I promise y'all.
It is quiet, that's for sure.
Come in, just do what you need to do before 9 p.m. And so I think it is more so that engagement piece. And so if you want to build a relationship, you have to show yourself friendly, right? So you have to take the time to actually be out into the community, make sure that you're actually engaging with different individuals, but also those individuals, you have to better understand them, right? So if our HBCU students, we know, are the trendsetters, right. They're out there in the community, they're making things happen. We need to value them and treat them as such. And so again, it's not just about leaning into different researchers who have done research on this particular entity, but yes, that's important, but making sure that we also have the opportunity to engage with them consistently. So it's that piece, but also understanding their media consumption habits, having those sort of conversations with those media companies that they lean into, making sure that we have those conversations with individuals who are HBCU adjacent. So who are they trusting? Right. And so this sort of rich insights, this sort of rich data help us to inform our relationships with those particular individuals, and that helps us to build trust. Another thing is making sure, again, y'all have heard me say this, but we're showing up consistently, right? And so it's not just we sponsor a classic and then we go silent, and that's all that we're doing for the year. We're working holistically to better understand how the organization as a whole is having those sorts of conversations with different HBCU students and alumni and institutional leaders, so that everything that we bring forth has that sort of holistic and comprehensive strategy. So it's not just marketing, it's talking to our corporate affairs people, it's talking to other individuals on other sides of the business, so that we show consistently how we're engaging with these sorts of communities, and our approach and our storytelling is impacted that way. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of positive conversation around our work.
And it's interesting you say holistic, because I think sometimes we forget. I mean, you guys are you guys the number 1 employer? I mean, like, so, right? Yeah. So,
we're smaller startup.
Right. Okay. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. You're small, bigger than a startup. But we forget, or sometimes I think people forget how many aspects of your business touch the community in general. Yep. So whether it's hiring, whether it's environment, whether it's, I mean, you name said pieces, and so.
Well, I think that's, go ahead.
No.
No, I was going to say that's important for us to highlight too. And so anything that I do, anything that we do, We recognize our place, we recognize our privilege, and so we're leaning into these issues of access. So what can we do to better enable or to better support a different community, right? And I think some other brands or maybe some individuals is more so what can we do for you, what can we do in that particular sense, but literally we are thinking through different ways that we can support in terms of that access. So we recognize virtually, we recognize our omnipresence, and so we are powered by that emphasis in trying to make sure that we're utilizing our scale, our scope, and our impact in service of others.
You asked who nodded their heads around Black and Unlimited, but take some time just to talk about it.
Yeah, so our Black and Unlimited initiative was launched. I'm gonna show my age a little bit. I'm a fresh graduate of
okay,
college.
right. Adjacent.
No, exactly.
I'm adjacent to graduating.
Yeah. It's launched 3 years ago, and so the original tagline was "For who you are and who you want to be, Walmart is here." So it started as a celebration of intersectionality. So you could be Black and unlimited. So literally Black and, we'll just use me, Black and a Southerner, Black and in media, Black and a saxophone player, which I honestly do. I know you appreciate jazz, so I just put that for you there. Alto sax, y'all can find me in the Duke Alumni Band.
Okay.
We'll talk later. I was featured at Madison Square Garden. If you go to my Instagram page, you can see that too. Side note, but still, the celebration of you can be whoever you want to be, and Walmart is here for you, right? And so I don't think other brands or many other brands were celebrating the intersectionality.
Right.
So what I'd like to tell people is my mission is to have this emphasis on 24/7 inclusive storytelling, right? And so understanding that there is diversity within diversity. So that's what led to the Black and Unlimited initiative, right? So not all Black people look alike. We're different in multiple ways. And so how do we celebrate that sort of intersectionality? And so from that, we've continued to morph and evolve that particular platform to right now, I'd say a nice feather in our cap. And again, I'm representing the larger team. It's not just me, but our brand and cultural engagement teams, our IMC teams, our creative teams. But we've evolved that to make sure that we have this additional impact in terms of recognizing the importance of Black entrepreneurs. So we were blessed with the stat that typically 42% of Black-led brands are discovered via word of mouth. And so because of that, a lot of our work this particular fiscal year has been given those opportunities for different Black-led founders and products. And so you've seen that through a lot of our work. And what I'm proud to say, again, leaning into what we mentioned in terms of access, many of those individuals who have been featured in our work have had record sales days, or they're seeing this sort of impact that is, again, not just having a campaign impact, but we're affecting people in a longer term and helping in terms of that economic impact.
Tiny Organics, just to remind you, that's the brand that we need to
That's your wife's organization?
get featured.
I got you.
Get featured
We're
in,
on it.
right?
We're
So,
on
okay, just making sure. That's the only reason why we even invited you here, was to accomplish that.
I see.
But, I do want to go to, yes, so my dad was a jazz musician, and he played saxophone.
Sure.
How has music shaped you?
Yeah.
I think it's, go ahead.
Oh, we're getting off topic. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, well, no, because you brought it up, and you're a very personal person, and I feel like I like to know people.
I'm with the detour, Bonin.
Okay.
No, it even goes beyond that. So my family is all musically gifted for the most part. So my mom's side and my dad's side, and so literally.
My dad told me point blank, you couldn't carry a note if it was in a suitcase. So
no.
I'm not musically gifted.
No, and then on my side of the house, it was you will join this group, you will join this choir, you will play that saxophone, you will play the piano. And so for that, it was nothing. Friday through Sunday, we were at somebody's venue or at a church. Everybody had to participate in some way. And so just my love and appreciation for that. And I was the only one, at least in my generation, because I'm the baby in that side of the family, I was the only one who continued on in that particular vein. So I still have my sax, I'm still playing, still have the alumni band appreciation like I mentioned, but it was because I would see my grandfather and his cousins and my mom and my uncles and all of them have these various groups throughout the community, and we would literally see the emotion and the impact that would result from their different performances. And I just wanted to make sure that, still not to get too personal, but just love that impact that they were having, and so I wanted to keep it up, and so that's why I've kept my sax too.
Right? No, but it's, I shot a piece with my dad. We went around the Yucatan. He was like, I don't know, he must have been 89 or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe 85. And we climbed 22 ruins, but we shot a piece called Jazz is a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting to hear, it was really kind of the runt of music in many respects. And the horn was kind of like, again, something that, they would play before you went out to battle. It wasn't really, and alto sax, or Adolph Sax kind of brought the instrument in, but it pioneered a generation of musicians, and it pioneered a generation of thought. There's only two types of people who can truly multitask, actually, and it's jazz musicians, because they jump, they don't stay within, right? Improvisation, or can truly improv, multitask, improv, whatever. And then psychopaths. So either you're a fucking psychopath or you're a good musician. But
we'll go with the first one.
Right. You can stick with that, bro. I mean, I won't put the other one on your resume. Yeah. But it's just interesting because they see the world. Jazz musicians see the world differently. So that's why I thought it was fascinating. So. Can you bring that to work?
Oh yeah, I'd say in my and my manager is here too. How are you doing, Joe?
You just brought everything.
I'm telling you.
Plug in the music, the .com,
I just saw it going right. But I think
multi-hyphenate or whatever they call it.
My brain is special, and I can admit it. And so I will have these sorts of moments where I'll just have this crazy idea, but I'm blessed to have so many people and advocates that will allow me to test and learn. So say for example,
inside of work as well.
Inside of work. So just to give you a few examples, you can find this on Walmart YouTube. I hosted a kids series called Story Time because we were wanted to be intentional. This was around COVID, and so people didn't know this was the intention behind it, but we were showcasing different Black and brown artists and different novels that included Black and brown protagonists, and having these sort of conversations or opportunities for this rich storytelling. So people thought it was more so for entertainment value in a lot of ways, but we were actually trying to teach students or trying to teach parents how to have these sort of conversations around race without beating them over the head with it. We did this series where it was a battle of the baritones between me and another individual within Walmart, and we were showcasing different products available in store and online. We've had different moments where we had the Black and Unlimited YouTube series to showcase how we can showcase different Black excellence even outside of Black History Month. And so we've been allowed to have this sort of opportunity to engage with different activations, with different serial content, with different sponsorships that I appreciate. And I think a lot of that is because our minds, we are marketers, don't get me wrong, but we're allowed that sort of flexibility to even think outside of non-traditional marketing mixes, because ultimately our goal is to make sure, again, that we are engaging with our customers and giving them what they want, and still having that opportunity for community, but leading with purpose.
I gotta say, man, I have such a different found respect for Walmart than I even had beginning this, just hearing that. Yeah. No, I'm serious. Look, man, corporate America, I'm going, dude, I spent a lot of my life there, man. Yeah. And people are like, don't you miss it? I'm like, do I miss walking on nails? No, I'm good. We get stabbed on the way to the lunchroom, and you're like, it's my fault. You're right. I should have washed my six. Sorry. But even beyond that, and that was actually interesting because you're in a place where it's very competitive and you're working with the best and the brightest. But I used to run an event, side hustle, which was called Brand New, and the whole idea. Some people here, I know, many people run up and say I was an alumni, and it was about charting your career. And I used to open up and say, look, there are more elite athletes in the world than there are vice presidents at Fortune 100. So if you think it's hard to be LeBron, it's almost impossible to be Indra, who was CEO of Pepsi at the time. And I said, and the challenge, if I ask any one of you in this room right now, and it was for high potentials, it would take 20, and it was a 3-day intensive course, and I just tried to put everything I had learned around career building. But I said, if I asked any of you to give me a PowerPoint on a service or product, you'd give me a 100-page PowerPoint. But if I asked you about your own career, donut, right? Which is sadly, and the walls of these organizations are littered with people who came in and said, I want to be CEO, but they didn't have a plan or an approach on how to get there. They didn't even know what game they were playing. But part of that course was because a lot of organizations didn't allow people to be their best self. And what you just explained to me was a company that's saying, you know what? If that inspires you, but you can find your passion and put it into the work that you do every day, who are we to get in your way? And that's what creates great companies, not okay companies, great companies. Because at the end of the day, the only value companies have is talent. We forget it's just people.
Yep.
It's literally just people. And so, anyway, so that's why that was very inspiring. We're way off topic here.
All good. I enjoyed that.
Is there anything your manager needs to plug too? Because I don't know what to. Well, is there a show coming up later tonight?
Actually, no.
Okay. So look, I think I am honestly truly fascinated. That was a very touching piece for me today. So, going back to HBCU, and we can bounce around some more too. I don't even know. I should be checking the time and should be maybe a more purposeful moderator. What when you think about the challenges, what have been the challenges for you? Well, you never answered this question real quick, which is, what do you think the perception is from a multicultural consumer? And it might be different, Hispanic, Asian, African American, of Walmart. What do you believe the perception is?
I think it just varies depending on the demographic. I think people do consider Walmart, and this is based on our research, to be reliable, obviously affordable and convenient. And what we're trying to do is make sure that people want to do business with us and not just need to do business with us. And so that's just to your point, making sure that people understand. What we're also recognizing is that we have an opportunity with what we consider our shelf shifters or inclusive shoppers to make sure that people understand the community good that we're doing so that we are top of mind whenever they're doing business with anyone for that particular matter. So there's still opportunities, but we're seeing definite growth in terms of seeing that different individuals are showcasing us or deeming us their retailer of choice.
And we always talk in this industry about brands that I love, and I think that there's something there. But what I think you said is something even more interesting, which is just the brand I want to do business with.
Yep.
It's like, I just want to do business with you because I know you're doing the right thing. I don't need to be in love with you, but exactly. I just want to. Yeah. It was like what they said. They said African Americans never ask for. It's a bad joke, but anyway, they never asked for the total. They didn't ask for equal rights. They just said just civil. Yeah. Just turn the dogs off. Just please, leash the dogs. But my point is like just I want to do business with you versus I have to because you're a necessity to me. And I think that that's an interesting space to be in. And then, do you think that, now I know it changes demographically, but when you were bringing in different companies that look different, are you doing that? Are you setting up that mix just across the U.S., or is it specific in certain communities? Or is there?
Yeah, I think overall there's a national campaign just to make sure that we are properly promoting different diverse-led brands. But even in terms of our in-store activations, we're obviously looking at the different demographics associated with those communities that are higher traded for a particular demographic, right? And so we just, it's a plug, so let me go ahead and tell you.
I'm used to it.
We just launched our different a clothing collection called New Evolution for Hispanic Heritage Month. And so we're working with Roberto Lugo, and we're working with Wish Me Luck. And so it's fashion, but it's also home and apparel, right? And so the stores that we're targeting, it's online, so we still have that national aspect, but that's just one example of how we're being intentional about the product drop. And the network is in the audience too, who helped us drop that. But it is intentional in terms of the different product placements, the different end caps, the different displays, so that it does tie what we consider with the community that it's going to resonate most with.
And then, where does an idea like that come from?
That is a collection of different brand partners, agencies, multicultural media. Another thing that I love about our team and its current dynamic is that it is very much collaborative. And so I'm very much the owner of the multicultural media strategy, but I still get an opportunity to engage with our cultural engagement team and weigh in and provide that sort of feedback and vice versa. So we teach this opportunity or teach this emphasis on integration because, again, we're just in service of the customer.
Challenges?
Challenges, I would say, for HBCU work, a lot of it for brands, I'd say, is self-imposed. And so it's almost like we have to do the work internally, right? And so you offer some data, and there were some interesting points from our Cultural Intelligence Hub. I think a lot of brands, whenever they hear the stat that HBCUs account for 3% of all colleges and universities, and 10% of HBCUs. 3%? 3%. And then 10% of the black students are attendees at HBCUs, right? They take that data and they might have a tendency to under-prioritize when they don't understand or don't have that sort of additional cultural impact they don't understand the cultural relevance, right? And so despite those stats, these are individuals who are driving the culture forward, and those individuals obviously have an impact even outside of their campus. And so it is that sort of unintentional or even unconscious bias that we have to be mindful of. Another challenge I would say is that a lot of brands are now understanding, to your point, the buying power associated with this demographic, but also just diverse individuals as a whole. So the market is becoming even more crowded. And so you have to figure out, the challenge is figuring out how to break through. And that, to our earlier parts of the conversation, is through, in my opinion, I know we're going to get to it probably, but through that sort of authentic connection to make sure that you're having those sort of conversations and even engagements with individuals within your target audience, so that you're not just producing content that won't resonate or different initiatives as a whole, but making sure that it is driven in insights, and that's what we lead with. Another challenge, which I think is great for different brands, is that HBCUs are understanding their power.
Right.
Students, alumni, institutional leaders, advocates, and so they're holding different brands accountable. So it's not just about cutting the check. You have to understand and be able to articulate your purpose, but also the payoff in terms of doing business with them. And so there's this greater accountability that I love seeing. It presents a challenge to certain brands, but I think it's great for the culture.
No, and I think the other piece under there is that there is such a huge opportunity to have impact on those campuses, because there has been so little focus on it. So your dollars actually, I think, go far further.
Yep.
You know, so redoing a dorm for in those schools, and we look, a lot of the insight in terms of what we brought to the table with our tour, and I don't know how many schools we are, 10, 15, 20, I don't know, we're a lot.
She said 17.
Okay, thank you. So, again, it was mind-blowing when I started looking at it, but not surprising, sadly. But when you begin to look at just a lot of the struggles and challenges, even one of the stats that came out was just around food insecurity. Like, a majority of students are not actually 100% sure, if they're going to be able to actually feed themselves.
Right.
And then you've got things like, when do they drop out, and why do they drop out? That's different scenarios and situations. And so attacking some of those challenges that are insight driven, that a company like what you guys are doing, or any of the larger companies in the world, it's a relatively low, I don't want to say low investment, but cash-wise low investment, but high intentionality and high impact.
Yep.
And ultimately return.
Totally.
And but it's interesting you said it's getting crowded. So yeah, is it? I still feel like it's for what they represent. I feel like it's so little there.
I think what we're seeing is that a lot of different companies are taking these sort of entities that are more so entertainment or sports related. So say, for example, we're sponsors of the HBCU New York Classic. And I think a lot of people are tapping into those particular markets or activities, and it is becoming a little more crowded in terms of those different spaces or those sort of media buys, where we're seeing a lot more or an uptick in terms of the brands who are, in my opinion, doing things that are more so lower lift in terms of sponsorship in that particular sense, maybe less in terms of the actual engagement on campus.
Right. And then when you guys are on campus, you said all parts of the organization. I'm guessing that's recruitment. I'm guessing that's across the board, which I think is probably the best way to show up. But yeah,
recruitment, early career development, constituent relations. And so we're just trying to be as comprehensive as possible. And granted, we're still gonna have a good time, or anything that we do. And so we're still gonna make sure that we have different higher profile people. We're gonna give you a DJ, whatever the case may be. But we're also gonna be intentional around student panels and making sure the conversation is rich. Because what we're seeing, and I'm gonna bring this up maybe a little later depending, is that it's not just, again, about the entertainment quality, but it's also helping to understand from a cultural perspective, how can we make sure that we are helping these students in terms of career and education and not just entertaining? So yes, we want to entertain, but we want to build a relationship with you. So even after post-graduation, you're sticking with us. So we were on your campus, we showed you a great time, but we also got you headshots. You had an opportunity to speak to a career counselor. You filled out an application for a corporate job. We told you about our different fellowships and internships. And so having that sort of purview where we're building our customer base and understanding that we're growing with them as they grow with us.
No, we're doing something with one of the pharmaceutical companies. That 5-minute note? We're doing something with one of the pharmaceutical companies, and it's with some of the nursing programs. And again, first, it's like 80% of black doctors. I don't remember the exact number. It's like outrageous.
Yeah,
so it's like if you want to reach African American doctors, guess where you? And that's to be fair, it's Cavell's genius, but it's like, where should you start? Probably where 80% graduate from, and there's nobody there. It's like kind of white space.
Yeah, and I think we got the same data point. And so it was 80% of doctors and dentists, 50% of public school teachers. 40% of different engineers all came from different HBCUs, right? So when you think about that sort of rich market, I think to my earlier point, most people just hear those two stats that I gave you. HBCUs account for 3% of all colleges and universities, only 10% of the black student population. But when you have that sort of additional context, you understand the opportunity.
And it's generational too. So there's a high likelihood that 3 to 4 generations went to this school, and and they show up, and so you're able to really reach much deeper. And again, affluence is higher, all those kind of pieces.
Totally.
So I know we got 5 minutes, and I'm sure you got a bunch of other stuff you need to plug. So I'm just gonna find out what what are just you kind of touched on this, but when you talked about making connections. What do you guys do post? When I leave, how are you staying connected with me? Or is it have it been built the goodwill and that's what becomes the intentionality?
No. It's constant re-engagement. And so, say for example, if you participate in any of our surveys, or say for example, if you're on campus and you choose to provide us your information, there's a constant but still respectful amount of information that's coming your way. And so what we also try to do is make sure, so say for example, the 4 different institutions where we took our HBCU tour, we're still having an opportunity to engage with the leadership and alumni. Those students who we profiled that you featured on Group Black, we're still in touch with them, and we keep them in mind for different opportunities as well. So we have different events that are happening throughout the year, and so we consider them for different talent opportunities. It's sort of this, in my opinion, once you're in the Walmart family, you're a part of the Walmart family until you give us a reason. And so,
Tidy Organics, we want to be here. We want to be
good. But it is that sort of intentional relationship building piece. And so we have, I thought, done a good job, and I'm a little biased, but I still think that we have intentionally focused on moving away from this sort of one and done mentality, where we're only going to engage with you for a particular period of time, but still have that sort of re-engagement. We're going to keep you in the loop, keep you in the know, and be strategic about how we engage with you, yes, but it's not one and done. And I think different, not to plug anything else, but there are different programs or different individuals who are here, who are part of some of our programs, even outside of HBCU, who can attest to our emphasis on bringing you in the loop and making sure that we're providing different opportunities. So we've got a great relationship. We started a Black Creators Program around professional development. We're in season 2 around that. And even, shout out to Baishal, who's here front row, who graduated from that particular program, but still, again, finding different opportunities for different individuals. And that applies to our HBCU work too.
No, and we yes, this is billed as HBCU because we just think there's such a huge opportunity there. Sure. We just really, and to that point, we think there's a huge opportunity to also have just impact, which is, we're kind of that dual type of organization. But also, what I'm taking away from this, even more than that, is, again, without saying, you're highly impressive, so that aside, but I'm very impressed at the amount of focus that this truly represents in all the right areas for Walmart. Because the consistency component, because that takes, it's one thing to say I want to be consistent, it's another thing to actually invest. Right. And so, and that's, every piece I hear is a different point on the schedule and in the life cycle where you guys are really truly investing in this consumer and in the teams that are necessary to build it, and quite frankly, in the people and the leadership, and giving that leadership the power to bring about, what's right. What advice would you give to somebody who's sitting in your shoes at a different organization, trying to kind of move this boulder, or maybe it's not a boulder for you, it sounds like it's just willy-nilly, just a fruit, but who's trying to move this concept forward inside their organization?
Yeah, a few things. One is we already talked about this, but recognizing the market, right? And so I think oftentimes, because of those data points that I previously mentioned, oftentimes HBCU work or even work with diverse communities is under-prioritized or it's underfunded or there are just not enough resources. And so understand the different market or those sort of opportunities, right? You can make a business case for HBCUs, again, because of the data that I mentioned, or that we mentioned together too. I'd say another thing is making sure that there's full integration. And so if you want to have these sorts of conversations or if you want to reach this particular demographic, like we mentioned, start from the ground up, making sure that there's that intentional conversation, that integration that's taking place. So again, we're not building something for you, we're building something with you. Another thing is, again, we talked about it, but making sure that we understand the marketplace as a whole. So what's my competitive advantage? How can I, with my company, with its strengths, its weaknesses, its opportunities, how can it make an impact with this particular demographic? And so you don't have to be Walmart, you don't have to be any other brand. Have that sort of intentional conversation internally around what you can do, what your brand can do to reach this different target audience. And then I'm going to leave you with some great tidbits or quick hits from our Cultural Intelligence Hub. And so I got to give them a credit because I'm totally plagiarizing at this point. One is understand the cultural impact of HBCUs. And so again, they are driving the culture. Recognize you are, in the passenger seat. Let them drive, but understand that conversation and consistency has to happen. Another thing is build the relationship before they're even on campus, right? Mm-hmm. So the relationship should be consistent. So before move-in day, all the way to post-graduation. Building that sort of relationship and understanding the benefits associated with it. If you have an on-campus or even a non-on-campus presence, we already talked about the consistency that's necessary. Don't forget that there are other HBCUs out there besides the larger or the bigger names. And then again, just reiterating this point, understanding their passion, but also their pain points. And so not just targeting or doing work that celebrates the compelling or the flashy, but leaning into those things that can really impact on the longer term. So leaning into those education initiatives and even things that are focused on career as well. Because ultimately you have to clearly articulate your purpose, but also articulate that payoff to your target audience.
Oh, I think that's a lot to leave with, and I'm so grateful, man. It was really very interesting, and it left me with a good feeling, this conversation. But
thank you.
One question. So tell us, where do we? You kind of rush through it, and all jokes aside, where do we find your music, and where else should we look for you on social? Or?
You can. I'm linked in, add the periods though, D.J., or else you might not be able to find me, Vaughn, okay. So get at me there. I didn't have a QR code. There is a QR code. There's a link that we can give you for those of you who are interested in learning more, or if you have different ideas related to Black and Unlimited, or just have an idea for Walmart. And so I can bless you with that information too. If you did want to hear me play, I'm DJ V220 on Instagram, y'all, it's open. So feel free, and y'all can see a clip of me when I was on the Jumbotron at Madison Square Garden last year. I'm just saying. People were asking me for autographs when I was leaving. It was a whole thing. And so you can find me there too. And then otherwise, just let me know I can be helpful to y'all and vice versa. Let's keep the conversation going.
All right. Well, let's give a huge round of applause, please, to DJ. Thank you so much.
Y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh wait, we gotta get